Hello and welcome to AXSchat. We're glad to be joined today by Roy Lilley from the Academy of Fab Stuff. Roy, you've been working in the NHS for a long time. This is our National Health Service, but you specialise in doing motivational stuff, and you were brought to my attention by a former guest on AXSchat, Igna Rip, who we absolutely love for his positivity and flamingo shirts and pink socks and the whole 9 yards that he brings to the
He
equation.
was
He's
over. He
a
was over
brilliant guy.
here recently. He was over here recently for a long weekend, and it felt like a fortnight. I was exhausted by the time. He's
I
a great
bet.
guy. He's a
It
great
must have
guy.
Yeah,
been fun. It must have been fun. We love Ignar.
Yes,
yeah,
He's
I think
wonderful.
if we could bottle him, we could sell a lot of
Yes.
bottles. He's a good guy.
yeah, yeah. It'll be a pink
Yeah. It
lotion
would
of
do
some
well in
kind.
the US.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah,
would do very well in the US right now.
I think it'd be like a Pepto-Bismol color, though. Definitely be Pepto-Bismol color. So Roy, went slightly off topic there. So tell us a bit about the how you came to create the Academy of Fab Stuff and what you're doing with it.
Well, here's the story. The full story is that I was at a conference one day, and in the news on that morning came the very unwelcome news that a hospital had found itself in a real mess. Um, in the UK, we have targets for just about everything. We've got more targets than a fairground, but the one of the targets that we have is the target to give people with cancer chemotherapy in certain windows. It emerged that three patients hadn't been given those treatments within that window in that time, and they've died. Now, we didn't know whether they died because they were very sick and would have died anyway, or they died because they didn't get the chemotherapy. Anyway, the police were called. The chairman of the hospital stood down. The chief executive left, and it was a shame. He was a good guy. He was a doctor. He was responsible, of course, not culpable, but responsible. And I couldn't figure out why it was that good, honest people working in our health service with a strong sense of vocation, professional qualifications, had got themselves into such a mess. And what had happened was they had falsified the documentation. They had pretended the patients had had the treatment. So what had turned these good people into liars? Well, the system had, because here we have a way of regulating our hospitals called inspection. It's a very old-fashioned idea. It's been denounced by most management gurus. It's been abandoned pretty well in every industry, but the NHS still does inspection. Now, this hospital was expecting to be inspected, and the managers of the hospital thought they were doing everybody a favour by fiddling the documentation. So when they were inspected, the fact that they hadn't given these appropriate treatments on time wouldn't emerge. Well, they got discovered. And I stood on the stage, almost at my exasperated wit's end. That this is ridiculous. We can't do this to people. We're turning them into crooks. Wouldn't it be a good idea if we had, I don't know, the Academy of Fabulous Stuff, where people could ring up and say, we've got problems with our chemotherapy targets. Does anybody have any ideas on how to fix it? And someone would spin a Rolodex somewhere or look in a file and say, yeah, there are 3 hospitals here that have had problems. Here's their phone number. Give them a call and see if they can help you. Wouldn't that be a great idea? And I kind of said it in a light-hearted way. But anyway, the upshot was when I got off the stage, a guy came up to me and said, that's a good idea. You should do that. I said, what? He said, the Academy of Fabulous Stuff. It's a great name. You should do it. So I did. I found some people to help me. I invested in the servers and the website. And here we are 4 years later with 3 million page views a year, 2,000 page views a day on some days. We're just about to start in Australia. We'll be in Canada next year. We've got interest from right across Europe. And the whole idea is based on the management theory of positive deviance. It works like this. All organizations perform around a mean. You get negative deviance where things go wrong at the bottom, and positive deviance where things go right at the top. The negative deviance is what we focus on. Everybody focuses on what went wrong, who did it, who's responsible, who can we blame. What's called positive deviance, and we find people who are in the same boat as everybody else. No one's got any more money than anybody else. Everybody's got too many patients. But we find the people who find the solutions. We then share the solution. And we say, no, there's no such thing as a little thing. Everything's a big thing to somebody. And if you show people what good looks like, they'll get on, they'll do it better. That's our philosophy, that's the history, and that's how it works.
Great. And actually, we've been running for a similar length of time. AXSchat's been going 4 years as well. We just celebrated our 4th birthday. And our outlook is very similar because we work in a profession in accessibility which is quite finger pointy. So we don't have CQC, but we do have a lot of people that like to point the finger and tell you you're doing stuff wrong, rather than highlight all of the wonderful stuff that organizations are doing. So a lot of companies were very afraid to talk about the work that they were doing to be inclusive, or to find solutions for people with disabilities, because they were afraid that someone would turn around and say, yes, but you're still not doing enough. So we took a conscious decision to try and focus on the positives. So it's great to have someone else here that is also focused on positivity. I know that Antonio has a question, so I'll hand over.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. So, by looking at that from a positive perspective, do you think you end up with more people, talking about this, talking about it, and asking for help, and also trying to find ways to improve the way how they were working?
I think we do. I mean, we have now established 150 ambassadors who work in the NHS. They're doctors, they're nurses, they're managers, and they become our ambassadors. They give us their time, and they encourage people to share what we call share the good stuff, to share their best practice. We have meetings with them. We have an annual conference. We just had our big awards. We have an awards ceremony every year. And what I find is, I mean, look, you have to find the fulcrum point, and then you find the lever. And sometimes you need a very long lever to lever the fulcrum point. But our fulcrum point is the belief that people will do good stuff if you just give them the opportunity. The great thing is if you create the time and space for good people to do great things, they'll deliver. And that's the trick of leadership. There are 2 tricks in leadership: create the time and space for good people to do great things, and always hire people better than you. Those are the 2 things. And that's what we aim to do with the Academy. And yes, I think we do. I mean, we get inquiries all the time now from people. I mean, we've had a big problem here with people coming into hospital through our accident emergencies systems. It's been chock-a-block, very, very full. And we now promoted an organization called ESIS, which is the Emergency Services Collaborative. They went from a couple of page views on the Department of Health website to thousands of views, and now they run their own conferences and do their own stuff. We don't take credit for what they do, but we do take credit for the fact that we made it available and people can search and check. The pages work just like a Facebook page. You can upload your good stuff and you can search for things as well. So it's a really straightforward thing. And I think from the numbers that I look at, we are gathering traction with people saying, do you know what? We're not going to reinvent the wheel. Let's find out what other people are doing. So I think we are, yes.
And by doing that, do you believe that you also contributed to the well-being of all the stakeholders?
Well, we like to think so. We've created a community. We actually call ourselves a social movement now. It's a huge community. It's run on a private Facebook page, and the people on the Facebook page just do themselves. They do it themselves. They meet themselves. They meet up for drinks. They take their kids out together. They go shopping together. They meet at conferences. We do regional events. And so we've created a kind of social movement of people who share our view of life that there's always somebody with a solution. You just have to find the person. And we try to make it easier to find. And I think, we do have a very good spirit. We have another thing called the Academy Roadshow that we take to hospitals, where we have some fun in the hospitals. And this is interesting, we get the departments to showcase their good stuff from one department to the next. Because quite often in these big hospitals, one bit of the hospital doesn't know the good stuff the other bit's doing. And, we've had instances where people have come up to us and said, we never realized we were such a fantastic place. So we kind of introduce the hospital to itself. And that's so I think the answer is yes. I think we do help take the pressures off.
Roy, I find this very interesting in a lot of ways. But my daughter, I have a 31-year-old daughter who was born with Down syndrome, and she also has I don't think it has anything to do with the syndrome, but she's a very small woman. Her veins are small, or everything is small on her. And she, unfortunately, she was in the hospital here in the United States. And we often talk about how terrible healthcare is in the United States. They're terrible. But we had such a beautiful experience, and it was a really scary situation. She almost died a few times. She needed emergency surgery. It was really, really, really scary. But what I saw, these professionals coming together, these nurses, doctors, technicians, administrators, to really, really work with us as a team was really beautiful. And as you said, Roy, sometimes just the little touches, it is so huge. And one day, my daughter was going down to get a CT scan, and we knew that she needed emergency surgery. We were all freaked out. She went to the CT scan. When she came back, the nurses and the technicians had all decorated her room with princess theme. They had tiaras and boas and crowns, and all of the nurses, and everybody was waiting for her. And some of the other patients got involved. Wow. It was so beautiful. I'll cry thinking about it. And then they started talking about some other things they're doing. And we often forget that there's so much beauty happening in these hospitals. These people give their lives to us. My mother passed away the very last day of the year last year. It's been an intense period. And the people that showed up, the emergency people, to help me when my mother was in trouble, to think that we can just call and these amazing people rush to us to help. These hospitals surround us with love. It's really beautiful. And I love what you're doing. And I'm wondering, how does the United States get involved? Because do you look at it and say, well, the United States is doing it differently because the way we're not, we're fighting over who gets coverage and all that mess, but it's not socialized per se, but in some ways it sort of is.
We're not worried about that. In fact, we have quite a lot of shares with the Cleveland Clinic, who often browse our website and pinch our ideas with pride, and they give us ideas as well. So no, absolutely not. And we would love to have a relationship in the US. I mean, the problem with the NHS, with the US.
I want to do it.
Yeah, okay, right. That's the deal.
Let me help. Let's get our NIH involved too. Yes, let's get our NIH involved too.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do it. The difficulty from our point of view, is that it's a disaggregated market. And where do you start? You need somebody there who knows the way around. So if you can help us do that, I'll be on the first plane over, and we'll get you. Yeah.
And we went to, I'm going to give a shout out, Henrico Doctors Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, which is part of HCA. HCA has 300 hospitals all over the United States and in the UK.
Yeah.
And so let's get the HCA involved. Yeah.
Well, the benefit of this kind of thing is that we talk to each other and we make contacts, and then we can share our good stuff as well, because there's good stuff going on everywhere. So I'd be very anxious to do that. And what you say about the staff is so important. We've featured just recently a lot of end-of-life care, which is very difficult. Yes. And we've got some fantastic examples of end-of-life care and how it's small things. To just give you a little example. One of the hospitals asked men to donate their ties, and they cut the ties off and they stitched up the bottom, folded the pointy bit over, put a button on it, and then when someone dies, when you give them back their jewelry, it's put in this little rather nice little tie, instead of just putting it in a box or wrapping it in tissue. So I mean, it's the absolutely small things. And we had an incident where one of the nurses, there was a girl having chemotherapy. One of the problems with chemotherapy is you get mouth ulcers, and it's a very uncomfortable thing. And the nurse went down to the canteen and brought an ice lolly and brought it back and just said, try that. And an ice lolly, in our money, it's like less than £1. It was such a big thing. There is no such thing as a small thing, because the small things are the big things to somebody somewhere. And we major on that. I mean, I wouldn't want you to think that we don't do. I mean, we do big strategic stuff as well, and we do stuff around flow and dynamics and surgical procedures and all that kind of stuff. But we absolutely get the fact that it's the little things. And I tell you, I've been in the NHS a long time. I've been in the NHS about over 40 years, I think. I used to come to work with Florence Nightingale on a bicycle. But I realised, it was only in the last 4 or 5 years that I realised I've wasted my career. Completely wasted my career, because I used to think you could change things from the top down. You could make a plan and give it to people and they go and do it and deliver it. And I've seen major reorganizations, and I've been involved in all these major organizations, and I never asked myself, why do we have to keep reorganizing things? Because it doesn't work. Top down doesn't work. But what we've learned is that ground up works. It's good roots make tall trees. And that's how you do change. People love change if they think they're in charge. It's very simple. And so we do a lot around change, man.
Yeah. Antonio just put in our chat window about the concept of change agents, and this is something that we talked with Dr. David Bray and Vince Cerf. So slightly different industry, but there again, he was the CIO of the Federal Communications Commission.
Yeah. But the principles are the same.
Principles are absolutely the same. Yes.
People will do change if they're involved, but they don't like change done to them.
No, absolutely.
Right.
And
so it's not rocket
no voice.
Science.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you want is pull change, where people are willing, not push.
It's simple. If you want to change something, you figure out what it is, what you're doing. Decide if it's what you want to do. Put things in place to make sure you got it all the time, every time, until you don't want it anymore. 4 simple steps that you can involve everyone in. And then, you just go to places and say, okay, what needs to be changed here that we can do with the petty cash? And people will give you 10 ideas. That's what
the ideas, and the little things can be such game changers. And like you said, it's about the big things too. Yeah. Go ahead, Neil. But it's
sorry, Neil, we've hijacked it.
It's humanizing.
No, that's okay.
Humanizing the health.
And sometimes it's best, everyone sometimes from management perspective, everybody is basically connected with their peers and sees things from a very horizontal way. And you really need to know how the dynamics of your organization, how people work. You need to, if you know your organization really, really well, you'll be in a great position to empower change agents.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And really the stuff that you've been doing in the last 4 years is the getting out of the way bit of managing, which is the most important bit of managing. Is you facilitate and you get out of the way.
We've created the time and space, and people have gone on and they've done it. So sorry, that's my phone. I got rid of it.
Yeah.
Busy day.
So you've also
it's social change. Social change, which is so important.
You also do, a lot of communicating, because you've got an email letter that goes out to it's 300,000 people a day or something.
Well, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know anymore. We have a huge mailing list, and we certainly get into 100,000 inboxes in the UK every week, and then it gets shared around social media and so on. So we did have someone look at our footprint, and they thought it was about 300,000.
Wow, that's huge for something regular and I read up about it and you said people used to take the mick out of your poor spelling and stuff like that because like me you're dyslexic, but actually it's the message that counts. But uh, and maybe it's the fact that you are dyslexic that has caused you to take this different view and this different path. What
Well,
would you say about that?
it's interesting. I had a very bad time at school, and I was very good at sports. So I survived on the fact that I could, be in a team and help win something, or bring trophies back. And schools like the trophy cabinet filled with
Yes.
stuff. But I wasn't. I was horrible, really. I was a horrible kid. I was disruptive. I mean, my hobby now is painting, but I got thrown out of the art class for being disruptive. And my English teacher said I would never write anything more than a laundry list, and I would probably be unable to spell most of the words on the list. And it was true. And I used to hide the fact I couldn't spell. I just had great difficulty in learning. I had a lot of common sense because I got that from my mum and dad. You are what's in your genes. But I had a bad time. And it wasn't until later. I mean, I think if I'd have, because I was the son of a window cleaner and I went to an ordinary school, I was regarded as disruptive and they just wrote me off academically. If I'd have been the son of a lord and gone to a public school, they probably would have said, why is this boy so stupid? And figured out the fact that I was dyslexic. Now, where I came from, we didn't know what dyslexia was. And it's only really in recent years that dyslexia has come to the fore. And if these things can ever be called fashionable, it became fashionable. I mean, it's been a damn
Yeah.
nuisance in my life, but people were prepared to talk about it. And I made a movie about it. And I said, look, actually, what I actually said on the movie was, I'm dyslexic and I don't give a stuff. And I do write regularly. I've written for all of the national newspapers. I've written 27 books. I'm just writing a book now on bereavement management. And I write almost every day for a huge audience in the NHS. And I know I get my spelling wrong, and I know I get typos, and I can't see them. I've tried everything. You know yourself. I've tried the blue glasses. That's supposed to help. It
Yeah.
doesn't. The spell checker helps. And now, I mean, I think people have a bet to see how many typos I'm going to have in the week, but I don't give a stuff. People write to me and say, "Do you know in the third paragraph of today's e-letter, there's a howler of a spelling?" And I say, "Look, I write 700 words every day. The other 699 are okay. I got one wrong. Get over it." So I'm really quite in your face about it. I don't care, and it's difficult for kids at school. But I don't think we want to drive them inwards, which is what happened to me. I think you have to say, look, this is what I am. This is what I can do. Measure me, look at me, calibrate me for what I can do, not what I can't do. And I think I'm a pretty good writer. I think I can do interesting things with the written word, and I do. And I think it's what's inside you that really counts. And so that's what I do every day. And if people don't like my spelling, well, then don't read it.
I agree. And
That's
also,
cool.
what if you're not broken at all? Same way with Neil. What if you aren't? This is just the way your brain works, and your brain is more innovative. So what if instead of assuming you're broken and you're a bad disruptive kid and Neil's a bad kid because he has sort of a similar story, and then it starts multiplying out, and instead, who is Roy? Okay, Roy's a talented sports. He is an innovative writer. We've got to stop this. You're bad because.
Yeah.
And I think that is the opportunity we have. And Neil, I know you want to comment on that too.
Oh, I'm bad for a multitude of reasons, but it's not my dyslexia. And like you, I didn't get diagnosed until I was in adulthood. So I was a dilettante, a window gazer, lazy, you name it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I yeah, to a certain extent, I actually did live up to some of those expectations. But the one
Well, I
thing that
tell you, you talked about
yeah.
being diagnosed.
Hmm.
I was, I mean, this went right through my life
Hmm.
until 20 years ago. So I'm 73 now. So this was
Yeah.
20 from 73. Um, I was a councillor. I was a councillor and the leader of the council and the mayor where I lived in Surrey, in England. And I also became a governor of a school. And I was talking to the headmistress one day, and I was talking about school and experiences at school and all that. And she said, Roy, she said, you're dyslexic. I said, how do you know? She said, I just know. So I did a test. And you've probably done the same rather
Hmm.
peculiar test.
Yeah.
And that's I didn't so I didn't get sorted out until I was, it was far too late. And since then, I've set up a university department for the health services management. I've been a visiting fellow at Imperial College. I've been lucky in that it's not stopped me doing anything, but not everybody's as lucky, and some people do need a lot of help and
Yeah.
encouragement.
So it's interesting because I did get diagnosed later in life, but and it came about because I ended up working for a technology company that provided tech for people with dyslexia. Um, it ended up there because it ran in the family, but I was in complete denial. But one of the things that we saw was that a high proportion of the people that we were providing kit to were nurses, because what had happened is that now there's a requirement for nurses to gain degrees. And it was much more of a vocational type of job previously, and now there's a lot more written work. So people that are naturally drawn to nursing, there seems to be a fairly high proportion of people with dyslexia in the caring profession. So I don't know whether there's some kind of link between dyslexia and empathy, but we saw this a lot. We were providing a lot of support for people in the nursing profession. That just wasn't there before, and sometimes I think the um, over strong focus on academic qualifications is getting in the way of people being able to just get on and do stuff. Um,
Yes, and it's
yeah,
it's the way we get in the way as well.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I like to think that things are getting easier and they're getting better. Um, I spoke at a school to some youngsters, and actually the school were pretty receptive, and they were doing the best they could. But look, it's easy for me. I'm Roy Lilley. I'm kind of do what I do, and I'm not that bothered. But if you're young and you're impressionable and you're trying to find your way in life and you want to be successful and all that, and you're very conscious, then it can be a big inhibitor. So all we can do is just encourage people.
yeah.
So if you're not careful, you'll end up like Roy Lilley.
Could be
That's not
worse.
good.
Mm. So I think there's also well, we see this because we do quite a lot of work also with the Ministry of Justice. So we see that people with dyslexia are generally very innovative, but also, unfortunately, innovative on the wrong side of the law. So you see
Yeah.
quite a lot of people who are dyslexic or neurodiverse in the justice
Well,
system. So it's something
I
that
mean,
we
this is so much about happenstance and
yeah,
what your life's chances are. I mean, people
yeah,
want three
absolutely,
things. People
yeah,
want three things. They want a safe place to live, they want a job, and someone to love. Those three things, anywhere in the world, it works. And that's what we must do as community leaders and people who've got influence and so on. We need to remember those three things. I mean, no kid is born bad.
no,
They're just
no,
born
no,
into bad circumstances, and it's up to us to sort that out.
yeah,
In the
and
UK, we've got much higher levels of poverty than we can be proud of, and there's a lot going on in our communities. It's a big responsibility on all of us to do what we can.
yeah, no, that's very true. No one's born bad. We make bad choices. sometimes, and we certainly have, we're dependent on our circumstances, as you said. So thank you very much for taking the time today. We've come to the end of our half hour. I need to thank our supporters, Barclays and My ClearText, for keeping the lights on for us, and doing the captioning so that we can be accessible. Thank you, Roy. We look forward to having a good discussion on Twitter.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm coming to America.
Yes, don't worry, Roy. I'm going to be emailing you right after this. So
So
okay.
I think
Listen, thank you,
the
three of you, for the opportunity. The half an hour has just flown by, and thank you very much. Yes. Bless you both.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Roy.
you.
Thank you.